Welcome to Taxpayer Empowerment. I'm your host, Jose Melendez, Campaign Director for the Taxpayer Protection Project here at TPPF. Today we're diving into an issue that sits at the heart of voter participation and government accountability, election dates, and how it impacts who shows up, whose voices are heard, and how responsive our local governments really are. And I'm thrilled to have as my guest someone who has been right in the middle of this conversation. We're joined by San Antonio City Councilwoman Misty Spears. Councilwoman Spears has quickly become a respected leader on the council for being thoughtful, measured, and unafraid to rethink outdated government structures that keep everyday voters on the sidelines. Recently, she supported a vote to move San Antonio's municipal elections from May to November of odd-numbered years, and she has expressed openness to go even further in the future. Councilwoman Spears, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jose. I'm delighted to be here.
So, as I mentioned, San Antonio recently voted to move those elections over to November of odd-number years. Why do you think this reform is important for voters? And tell us what you believe will improve because of this change.
Well, the first thing we want to ensure that it improves is turnout, and I think transparency comes along with that. Voters are used to a November election, and we did a lot of research on our own and even reached out to our constituents to get their feedback on moving this election, and overwhelmingly, they're in favor of November. They think of November as the time to vote. So that was the intent behind voting for the change.
So let's zero in on the data and some of the feedback you received from constituents. When you looked at that, what convinced you that November is the rightful place for elections here in San Antonio?
Well, initially, I was really hesitant to do this move because I approached this as, if we're going to move this, let's move it once to a November of even years election. And then I had a little time to do some research, and I really want to listen to my constituents in my district and hear their feedback. So we did a survey directed directly to our newsletter subscribers from District 9 and had a huge response in just a few days. We got 743 responses, and only 13% of our responses opposed the move to November. And they were evenly split on whether it should be in an even or an odd year. So they really wanted us to move to November and didn't seem to mind if it was even or odd. So that really helped me inform on the decision to go ahead and just let's get us to November, and then we can look at moving to an even year.
So a lot of cities have stuck to this mentality of this is the way it's always been done, May elections. How do we break that cycle and help people understand that this is a structural issue that affects, how voters participate in their elections?
So I think the state really helped when they passed the legislation allowing for this move by the end of this year, which is what prompted the urgency in the move to the odd year elections. And that's because they see and know, as well as now I understand, that this does increase our turnout. Something we experience in May is extremely low turnout and voter fatigue as well. And so if we can get everyone to continue to think as they already do and just align with what they already understand is that November is when we turn out to vote, then it's just going to increase turnout and transparency. And that's what all politicians and those in government should be looking to do.
One good example of that comes to mind personally. I remember back in 2018, it was a midterm election between Beto and Ted Cruz. High turnout election for a midterm election. So that was November of 2018. Fast forward 6 months later to May of 2019, Cypher ISD over in Houston had one of the biggest bond elections in recent memory, about a little over $2 billion. And it passed with 2% or so of registered voters showing out to vote. That's 2% of registered voters for over $2 billion.
Right.
So it really makes you think, had you had that election on an even numbered year, just that year prior, that's a huge difference. So in thinking about that, you mentioned that you want to see those elections move to even number years. Why do you think that would benefit voters, having those elections on presidential years or gubernatorial years?
Well, we'll see more dollars spent, which brings about more awareness. It's just a fact. And it's extremely important that, as you said, we see such low numbers in the May elections I think even moving to the even and we just moved to the odd November, but in the even November, we'll see even more turnout. And a 2% turnout is not representative government, and that's the goal. So getting to even numbered years, I know there's some concern that there'd be a tremendous undervoting problem for local elections being on a long ballot with a whole bunch of people on the same ballot. But even an incremental increase, when you're looking at, I think in San Antonio, our turnout was just 9.26% in our last May election. An incremental increase in that is a better representation of our voting population, having a voice and having more turnout and overall. And again, that's the goal. So
staying on that subject, opponents will say that having these elections in even number of years will overshadow what local governments are trying to do, bringing attention to what the reforms they're trying to pass. How do you respond to those concerns?
Well, I did kind of touch on it, but really expanding on it is that, I mean, I don't know how you argue against such a low turnout of 9.26% in a city as large as San Antonio. And if you put this alongside midterms or presidential elections where they're spending huge dollars, there's a lot of awareness to get out and vote. I do think you're going to see just more people going all the way through their ballot and paying attention overall and awareness that we have an election going on. I block walked so much in my election, and I can't tell you how many had no idea it was time to vote in May, but they know it's time to vote in November. And I think we're going to see increases in the voting, even at the local level, despite the increase in the number of candidates on a ballot.
So let's talk about the state legislature for a moment. One of the reforms you'll see, and we saw it this past session, you'll see it again next session, is moving some of these elections to November of even number of years, specifically with a focus on, these bond elections, these school bond elections. I mentioned earlier, Cypher ISD with $2 billion. I think a year after that, Prosper ISD out in North Texas had a nearly $3 billion bond that passed. Moving these to November, how do you think that helps, taxpayers whose, property tax bills consist of almost half, if not 2/3, of school district taxes?
We just have to have people aware and voting, and these elections have consequences, and bond debt will last for many, many years to your children, even as far maybe even grandchildren, commitments of their tax dollars. And so anything we can do to increase engagement and turnout just has to be done. So I think there's a lot of special interest groups that want to or incentivize to keep it in May so they keep the low turnout to get the result that they want. But I'm all about transparency and voter turnout and representative government. And it's just a principled approach. And that's what really led my decision, along with listening to my constituents. And I think the public on the whole has the same sentiment that, we need to really make this easier to vote. And November does that.
A point you made there, special interests. We know that May elections are low turnout. So there's a lot of special interests in the form of political action committees, supported by architectural firms, engineering firms. They want to see the passage of these bonds because they stand to benefit from it.
Right.
And again, these elections are low turnout, so all they have to do is drive several, teachers or what have you to vote, and these things pass, and the return on that investment is huge for them.
Right.
How do you see this as returning power to the people, to families, by moving these elections over to November?
Well, because they get their voices heard. I think that it's a better way for us to educate the voter and get them to turn out, and so that they really understand the implications of where their tax dollars are going to be committed. You can't educate the public enough on voting, and even when you do, it's just you got to make it as easy as possible to get there. And so this is just one of the many tools we can use to help us get increased voter turnout and have our voter base have their voices heard, and think about the real implications, especially when it comes to bonds and how their tax dollars are being spent.
So before we wrap up, let me throw a more forward-thinking question to you. When you think of the city of San Antonio 5 or 10 years from now, what is a city that's more fiscally responsible, more responsive, a more responsive government for the people? What does that look like in San Antonio?
For me, it's quite simple. It's a focus on core city function. I think we have to be focused on core services and restrict our spending. And that will lead us to, if we're doing our job well at local government, we will bring about economic prosperity. We are just supposed to provide those basic services so that our citizens can thrive and do what they want to do with their lives and really get out of their way and give them the tools to do that. And so for me, that is listening and connecting with our community and our constituents so that they also, too, like in this instance, know when to get out and vote. But restricting our spending in a more fiscally responsible way, and focusing our spending on core services.
Excellent. Well, Councilwoman Spears, thank you for your leadership and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Excellent. Until next time, I'm Jose Melendez, reminding you it's your money, your government, and your voice.